Living alone in old age can feel like entering a new chapter of life, one filled with both quiet reflection and unique challenges. But more than anything, it can be empowering and deeply enriching. As someone who has embraced this stage of life, I've come to understand how living alone shapes you in ways that are often unexpected. Through numerous conversations across online communities, many people have shared their personal experiences. From those voices, here's how living alone often prompts growth and adds new layers of depth and meaning to our lives as we age. 1. Reconnecting with ourselves. One of the most profound changes that living alone brings is the opportunity to reconnect with our inner selves. Free from the distractions of daily responsibilities or caregiving, people often find that they rediscover who they are at their core. Take Susan, a 68-year-old woman who shared her journey on an online blog. After her children moved out and her husband passed away, Susan found herself in a home that suddenly felt too big and too quiet. Initially, the silence weighed on her, amplifying the loneliness she felt. But over time, Susan began to embrace the stillness. She picked up journaling, a habit she had forgotten since her youth. Through this simple daily practice, she rediscovered her love for poetry and began attending local writing workshops. Susan shared that reconnecting with her creative side helped her process grief, turning the silence into a space for reflection and personal growth. Similarly, a man named Martin, 71, shared that after retiring and moving into his own apartment, he began to meditate. "I had always been on the go," he said, "but now, for the first time, I'm learning to just sit and be with myself." Martin credits these quiet moments of reflection with helping him come to terms with his past and giving him clarity on the life he wants to live moving forward. 2. Developing new routines and rituals. When living alone, developing new daily routines becomes essential to creating structure and purpose in life. Without the demands of work or family pulling us in different directions, many older adults find themselves establishing routines that are completely their own. Take Robert, a retired architect who always had a busy career that dictated his schedule. Upon retiring and living alone, he realized he needed to create a rhythm to his days that suited his pace. Now, Robert has a morning routine that includes reading the newspaper while enjoying a leisurely breakfast, followed by a mid-morning walk through his neighborhood. He also began a new hobby of woodworking, which has become a significant part of his daily routine. Robert shared that he often loses track of time in his workshop, carving intricate pieces of furniture for his home. "It's a routine I never imagined I'd have, but it's one that brings me incredible satisfaction," he said. For Diane, a 73-year-old widow, her newfound rituals revolved around self-care. Every evening, she lights candles and practices gentle yoga to unwind from the day. Diane shared in an online forum that this evening ritual has not only helped her manage the stress and loneliness that can accompany living alone, but has also brought her peace and clarity. "It's my time to focus on my body and my mind," she wrote, "and it reminds me that I'm still capable of growth, even at this stage of life." 3. Becoming more self-reliant. Living alone requires a level of self-reliance that many people may not have experienced in previous stages of life, especially after decades of sharing responsibilities with a spouse or family. While this can initially be overwhelming, it often leads to a strong sense of accomplishment and personal growth. Clara, a 70-year-old retiree, had spent most of her life relying on her husband to handle tasks like home repairs and finances. After his passing, she was faced with a steep learning curve. Clara shared her story on a popular forum, explaining how she felt paralyzed at the thought of handling household issues by herself. but with the help of online tutorials and a bit of determination, Clara learned how to manage her own finances, fix minor home repairs, and even assembled her own furniture. It was daunting at first, she admitted, but each new skill I learned gave me a sense of empowerment. I realized I could handle more than I thought. Similarly, Howard, a widower in his late 60s, had never been the one to cook in his household. After his wife's passing, he was forced to learn basic cooking skills. What started as a necessity quickly evolved into a creative outlet. Howard began experimenting with recipes and even joined a cooking club for seniors. He shared that he's now confident in the kitchen, something he never imagined would happen. Learning to cook not only nourished me physically, he said, but it gave me a sense of achievement and independence. 4. Rediscovering old hobbies and exploring new interests. One of the unexpected joys of living alone is the time and freedom it provides to indulge in hobbies, both those we may have left behind and new ones we've never had the chance to explore. For Alice, 74, retirement and living alone gave her the perfect opportunity to return to her love for knitting, a hobby she hadn't pursued in decades. Alice shared that, as a younger woman, she always enjoyed creating handmade gifts for her family, but life became too busy to maintain the hobby. Now, with the gift of time, Alice knits blankets and scarves not only for her loved ones, but also for local charities. It's calming, she says, and it reminds me of a time when life was simpler. On the other hand, Peter, a 70-year-old retired professor, found a passion for photography after his retirement. He had always enjoyed taking pictures, but never considered it a serious hobby until he had the time to dedicate to it. Peter invested in a camera and began exploring his city through the lens, capturing landscapes and moments of daily life. His photographs now decorate the walls of his home, and he even held a small gallery exhibit at his local library. Photography gave me a new way of seeing the world, Peter shared, and it's opened up a part of me I didn't know existed. 5. Building stronger connections with others on your own terms. Living alone doesn't have to mean isolation. In fact, many people find that living alone helps them build stronger, more intentional relationships. With more control over their time and space, older adults often find themselves seeking out interactions that are meaningful and fulfilling, rather than simply socializing out of obligation. Linda, 67, explained how her relationships with her children deepened after she began living on her own. Before, their interactions were often rushed and dominated by the needs of family life. But now, Linda sets aside time to meet her adult children for coffee or long phone conversations. "I'm more present now," she said. "We're not just catching up, we're really connecting." Similarly, George, a 71-year-old retiree, was a self-described introvert for much of his life. But after his wife passed away, he realized how much he missed the camaraderie of others. George began attending a local book club and now hosts a weekly gathering of close friends for dinner and discussion. "I never thought I'd be the social one," he said, "but these small gatherings have brought me more joy than I ever expected." 6. Facing loneliness and finding comfort in solitude. Loneliness is a common concern for those living alone, especially in old age. However, many have found that there's a vital distinction between loneliness and solitude. Solitude can be a peaceful experience, a time for reflection, self-discovery, and personal care. Consider Martha, a 72-year-old widow who spoke about the emotional journey she faced after her husband passed away. Initially, the silence in her home was overwhelming, leaving her feeling isolated. However, with time, she learned to embrace the stillness. Sitting on her porch each evening with a cup of tea, watching the sunset, became her favorite moment of the day. It was in those quiet times that she found peace. Viewing the silence as a time for meditation, and self-awareness, rather than as an emptiness to be feared. Martha shared that the key was understanding that being alone does not necessarily equate to being lonely. She acknowledged that loneliness would still creep in occasionally, but she found ways to counteract it, calling friends, visiting her local library, or going for walks in the park. Her story is a reminder that loneliness is a part of life, but it doesn't have to define us. Solitude can be a time to reconnect with ourselves and find comfort in the small, quiet moments. 7. Creating a space that reflects you. Living alone gives you the freedom to shape your living space entirely according to your tastes and needs. Your home becomes a personal sanctuary, an extension of your identity and personality, where you can fully express yourself without compromise. When Mark, in his late 60s, went through a divorce, he moved into a modest apartment. Initially, he found it challenging to adjust to living alone, but one of the unexpected joys he discovered was designing his new home. Mark had never been one for decorating during his marriage, but living on his own gave him the chance to experiment. He decorated his walls with travel photos from his trips abroad, set up a cozy reading nook with vintage lamps, and organized his vinyl record collection in a way that showcased his love for music. "My home is now a reflection of who I am," he said. "It's a space that feels uniquely mine, and it gives me a sense of belonging." Similarly, Sarah, a retired schoolteacher, had always dreamed of having a bright, vibrant home. But her late husband preferred a more muted palette. After his passing, she took the opportunity to redecorate their house with bold colors, deep blues, and cheerful yellows that brought her happiness. Sarah's living space became a true reflection of her personality, and she shared that this transformation was a form of healing for her. "For the first time, my home is entirely mine, and it brings me a sense of joy every day," she said. 8. Practicing mindfulness and gratitude. Living alone offers the chance to slow down and become more attuned to the present moment. Many older adults find themselves naturally practicing mindfulness, whether it's through daily routines or conscious reflection. With fewer distractions, there's more room to appreciate life's small, simple pleasures. Gloria, a 75-year-old retiree, shared how she began practicing mindfulness after moving into a small cottage by herself. She found that everyday tasks, such as watering her plants or preparing a meal, became meditative. Gloria noticed that she was no longer rushing through her day as she had during her years of working and raising a family. Now, she savored each moment, finding beauty in the rhythm of these simple actions. "Living alone has allowed me to really appreciate life in a way I never did before," she shared. Similarly, David, a former professor, began keeping a gratitude journal when he started living alone at 68. Every night before going to bed, he writes down 3 things he is grateful for, whether it's a pleasant conversation with a neighbor, a beautiful morning walk, or the sound of birds outside his window. He says that this practice has shifted his mindset and helped him focus on the positive aspects of his life rather than dwelling on what he lacks. "Living alone has given me the space to reflect on what I have, and that has made me more content," David shared. 9. Taking charge of health and well-being. Living alone encourages a proactive approach to health, as you become solely responsible for your physical and mental well-being. Many older adults find this autonomy empowering, prompting them to make better health choices and take control of their lifestyle. Michael, a 71-year-old retiree, realized that after moving into his own apartment, he needed to take responsibility for staying active. Without anyone to remind him to exercise or eat properly, Michael decided to join a local walking group. What started as short strolls around the neighborhood grew into a daily routine of longer walks and even light jogging. Not only has he noticed an improvement in his physical fitness, but he's also made lasting friendships through his walking group. Taking control of my health has made me feel more energetic, and I've built a social circle that keeps me motivated, he said. Monica, another senior living alone in her early 70s, shared her story about how living by herself gave her the space to focus on her mental health. After years of putting her needs behind those of her family, Monica began seeing a therapist for the first time in decades. She also started practicing meditation and self-compassion. The act of focusing on her emotional well-being improved her mood, and she shared that she now feels more balanced and at peace. Living alone has helped me realize that self-care is essential, not selfish, Monica said. 10. Embracing creativity in cooking and meals. Living alone opens up the possibility of embracing creativity in the kitchen without the pressure of catering to others. Many older adults have found joy in cooking for themselves, experimenting with different ingredients and techniques, or simplifying their meals to suit their own tastes. For Mary, a 66-year-old widow, cooking became a creative outlet after her husband passed away. She shared how she initially found it difficult to prepare meals just for herself, but over time, she began experimenting with new recipes and flavors. Mary started hosting small dinner parties for friends, where she showcased her new culinary skills. Cooking became something I looked forward to, rather than a chore. It's my way of expressing creativity, and it brings me joy, she said. On the other hand, Richard, a 73-year-old living alone in California, took a more practical approach. He created a simple meal plan that involved nutritious, easy-to-make dishes that required minimal preparation. Richard shared that having a predictable routine helped him feel in control of his diet, allowing him to eat well without the stress of daily meal planning. Simplifying my meals has made life easier, he explained. It's something I look forward to because it's one less thing to worry about.